The evening of January 30th, 2026, began like any other, until Buckingham Palace released a statement that would forever alter the future of the British monarchy. A handful of lines, elegantly phrased, but each word carrying the weight of history. The news was so shocking, it felt almost like a bombshell in the very heart of the royal establishment. Lady Louise Windsor, the quiet, often overlooked granddaughter of Queen Elizabeth II, had officially inherited a secret estate, a Scottish sanctuary so secluded and so hidden that not even the royal family's highest-ranking members knew of its existence. This was not just another royal property. The estate, known only as the Grey House, had been a tightly held secret for decades, whispered about only in the most exclusive and well-guarded circles of the palace. Its presence was so covert, its very name treated as a matter of national security, that even the royals themselves had no idea that such a place existed, much less that it would one day pass into the hands of a 22-year-old woman, one who had spent most of her life deliberately avoiding the public eye. The news was far more than a mere legal transfer of land. It was a story of hidden power, family betrayal, unspoken legacies, and a young woman who became the keeper of her grandmother's deepest secrets. To understand the magnitude of the moment, one must first understand the significance of the Grey House itself. This was no ordinary royal residence. Tucked away in the rugged, untamed terrain of the Scottish Highlands, the Grey House was a place far removed from the public eye, far from the polished, glamorous image the monarchy had cultivated for generations. It was a sanctuary, a refuge, where Queen Elizabeth II could escape the ever-pressing demands of the crown and be herself, away from the prying eyes of the media, the cameras, and the constant scrutiny that came with the title of queen. The house had been acquired in 1952, the very same year Queen Elizabeth ascended the throne, yet it was never listed under the royal name. Instead, it was bought through a private holding company, one designed to shield its true ownership from public records. It was an estate that never bore the royal title. To the world, Queen Elizabeth was always the symbol of strength, duty, and duty alone. But to herself, in the confines of the Grey House, she was simply Elizabeth, a woman in need of solitude, of silence, of a space where the weight of the crown could be momentarily lifted. The Grey House was a place where the Queen could work without interruption, read her red boxes, and take on the immense responsibilities of her role in complete isolation. There were no gilded ceilings or grand ballrooms, no rooms for visiting foreign dignitaries. It was not a place for ceremonial displays. It was designed for a family of one, a family that, at its heart, belonged to the Queen alone. But it wasn't just a place of comfort. It was a place of untold history. Inside the walls of the Grey House lay records, letters, photographs, and documents, historical treasures that were never digitized, never submitted to the royal archives. The archives within those stone walls were perhaps the most valuable asset of the British monarchy, more so than the crown jewels themselves. For over 70 years, they had remained untouched, waiting for the one person who would be entrusted with the Queen's private legacy. These were not mere papers. These were the unfiltered thoughts of a woman who had lived a life of duty, service, and sacrifice. Her private diaries, candid letters to world leaders, and personal messages to her family, all had found a home in the Grey House. These were not meant for public consumption, but rather for the one person she trusted most to keep them safe, unspoiled, and untainted by political manipulation or modern branding. The Grey House was a place of peace, a place where Queen Elizabeth could live as a person, not as the monarch. Here, she could feel the embrace of solitude, something she had rarely known throughout her reign. Surrounded by the towering peaks of the Scottish Highlands, it was so isolated that even Prince Philip, a man who thrived on activity and the bustle of social events, could not bear its oppressive silence. He had visited only a handful of times, but each trip left him longing for the vibrant noise of life outside. King Charles, despite his deep love for Scotland, had never once set foot inside the Grey House. To him, the estate held no ceremonial value, no grandeur worthy of his royal ambitions. The property was, in his eyes, a place of no significance. It wasn't until the Parker BS family began their campaign to claim it in 2025 that Charles realized just how significant the Grey House had been to his mother. It was a part of her life that had been carefully preserved, and a legacy he had never fully understood until it was too late. The fact that King Charles had never entered the Grey House became his greatest weakness in the battle for the estate. When the Parker BS family made their move, with surveyors and lawyers at the ready, Charles was left defenseless. His emotional detachment from the house left him unable to defend it when it mattered most. What the Parker BS family and Camilla failed to realize was that the true power of the Grey House was not in its land or its seclusion, but in its archives. These were not just royal records. They were the raw, unvarnished history of a woman who had seen the world change in ways few could imagine. The letters, photographs, and recordings housed within those walls told the true story of Queen Elizabeth's reign, of her personal relationships, her challenges, her moments of doubt, and her unspoken thoughts on the matters of state. For 70 years, these materials had been kept hidden, safeguarded from the eyes of the world. To those who sought to control the monarchy's narrative, they represented a treasure trove, an archive of history that could either be rewritten for the convenience of the present or left untouched as a testament to the truth of the past. In the autumn of 2024, Queen Camilla, now firmly established as the consort to King Charles, began to recognize a crucial gap in her royal influence. While Queen Elizabeth II had been a towering figure whose very presence commanded respect, Camilla's position was perceived differently. She had worked tirelessly to carve out her own place within the monarchy, establishing herself as a modern royal figure. But despite her efforts, something essential was missing. She was not just the queen consort. She was a woman in search of her legacy, one that transcended her title, one that defined her as a force in her own right. In the tightly controlled world of royalty, power was never simply about holding titles or being seen in the public eye. It was about the subtle control of symbols, history, and land. Camilla realized that influence wasn't merely gained through her role as consort or through public appearances. It came from the ability to shape the narrative, to control the story the monarchy would tell future generations. Behind closed palace doors, her ambition took root. She knew the one thing that could solidify her power was the Grey House, a mysterious estate long hidden from the royal family's collective knowledge. Its significance was not lost on her, and she understood the potential it held. The Grey House was more than a piece of royal property. It was the last untapped corner of the monarchy's intimate legacy, and Camilla was determined to take control of it. So she began her investigation quietly. She didn't speak of the Grey House by name. That would raise suspicion. Instead, she framed her inquiries as part of a routine audit of royal assets. She asked if there were any properties that had not been included in the official royal estate declarations. If she could find a loose thread, a legal anomaly, she could pull it, unravel the secrecy, and claim the estate for herself. She knew this could be the key to securing her legacy. But Camilla was not alone in her pursuit. The Parker BS family, a clan that had long hovered on the periphery of royal wealth, also saw the Grey House as their opportunity. The Parker BS family had quietly positioned themselves as aspiring influencers within royal circles, waiting for the right moment to establish a firm foothold. Tom Parker BS, a food writer with an eye for branding and commerce, began crafting plans for a high-end food tourism venture tied to the estate. For him, the Grey House was not just a piece of land. It was a symbol of exclusivity and royal prestige, something he could transform into a luxury brand. If he could control it, he could rewrite the monarchy's story in his family's image, combining heritage with modern commercialism. By early January 2026, The Parker BS family's campaign had shifted from whispers in the hallways to formal presentations and legal consultations. Camilla, sensing her opportunity, made her move. She formally presented her proposal to King Charles, carefully positioning it as a cultural preservation project that could serve both the royal family and the broader British public. Her pitch was compelling. She proposed transforming the Grey House into a cultural hub, a literary retreat for British authors, an environmental conservation center, and a tourist destination that could generate income and preserve the estate for generations to come. It was a vision that aligned perfectly with her ideas of modernization and sustainability. Camilla painted a picture of a thriving estate, intertwined with the royal family's legacy and connected to the future of British society, offering a bridge from the old world to the new. But despite her eloquence, King Charles hesitated. Deeply attached to the Grey House, he saw it not just as a piece of property but as part of his mother's intimate legacy. It was a place that held his mother's most private GHTS and memories, the sanctuary where she had retreated from the pressures of her public life. For Charles, the Grey House was sacred, untouchable. Its quiet walls had preserved the Queen's unspoken history, her private moments that had never been shared with the world. To hand it over to a modern venture, no matter how well-meaning, felt like a betrayal to the very essence of what his mother had fought to protect. When Camilla presented her proposal to him, he didn't reject it out of animosity or coldness. He rejected it out of duty, a deep respect for his mother's wishes, a reverence for her legacy. In his mind, the Grey House was not to be commodified, not to be transformed into another public spectacle. It was not a place for modern branding or heritage tourism. It was, in his eyes, a sanctuary for history, a history he could not bear to see altered. But Queen Camilla, undeterred, did not simply walk away. If anything, the rejection only strengthened her resolve. She could feel that there was more to the Grey House than just its physical presence. As she dug deeper, she began to suspect the truth, that her claim to the estate had never been meant to succeed. Queen Elizabeth had anticipated this very moment long before Camilla had even considered it. The evening of January 15, 2026, dawned quietly enough, but what followed was a moment that would echo through the annals of history. Lady Louise Windsor, just 22 years old, had inherited the Grey House, a secret royal estate so hidden and so deeply shielded that not even the royal family's highest ranks had known of its existence. For years, Queen Elizabeth II had taken extraordinary measures to protect this sanctuary from public view. It was a personal refuge, a space for contemplation, free from the relentless eyes of the world. But now, that secret had been unveiled to the world. The inheritance was not simply about property or land. It was about something much deeper. It was the final decision made by a queen whose life had been one of duty and duty alone. Behind the polished image that the monarchy had presented for decades, Queen Elizabeth had kept something sacred, a legacy tied not just to her reign, but to the very soul of the monarchy itself. The estate, known only as the Grey House, was not a mere residence but a symbol of the Queen's private identity, far removed from the pomp and ceremony of Buckingham Palace or the ever-watchful gaze of the media. The Grey House was where the Queen had gone to be herself, to escape the suffocating public demands of the crown. And in one final, extraordinary act, she had entrusted her most private treasure to Lady Louise Windsor. But what made this inheritance so stunning was not just the land, nor the secluded house itself. It was the legacy hidden within its stone walls. Queen Elizabeth had used a carefully crafted legal safeguard, Clause 31, to ensure that no one could ever claim the estate, no one except Louise. This decision, kept hidden for years, had now come to light, and its implications would ripple across the royal family, reshaping the future of the monarchy itself. Why Lady Louise, though? What made this quiet, reserved 22-year-old granddaughter the chosen one to carry the Queen's most private legacy? To understand this choice, we must look beyond the royal titles and the pomp that came with them. Lady Louise's inheritance was not one simply given because of her bloodline. It was a decision rooted in trust and something far deeper: the relationship she shared with the Queen during their intimate summers in the Scottish Highlands. While other members of the royal family arrived at Balmoral with grand entourages, media teams, and personal agendas, seeking to maintain their roles in the public eye, Lady Louise arrived differently. She was, in many ways, the Queen's quiet escape from the performance of royalty. Louise didn't come to Balmoral with a long list of royal duties or public appearances to attend to. Instead, she brought with her only a book and a pair of walking boots, a quiet companion to her grandmother, someone who didn't seek attention, but found comfort in simple, reflective moments. During those long, contemplative summers, it was Louise who became the Queen's most trusted confidant. When the rest of the family was preoccupied with the heavy expectations of public life, the Queen and her granddaughter found solace in each other's company. It was during these summers that the true bond between them grew, a bond rooted not just in familial love, but in the shared reverence for history. While other family members came and went, focused on public engagements or personal pursuits, Louise was the only one allowed into the Queen's private world. She was the one who helped the Queen sort through personal papers, documents that would never make their way to the royal archives. These were not the red boxes of state affairs or government communications. No, these were the Queen's own personal letters, dire, wise, and reflections, her candid thoughts on life, her family, and the world around her. The Grey House was the place where these records were stored, where the Queen's private history was kept safe from the prying eyes of the public and the political demands of the Crown. And it was Louise, with her quiet, steadfast loyalty, who became the Queen's trusted keeper of these untold stories. Unlike her more extroverted royal relatives, Louise did not crave the spotlight. She didn't perform for the public or seek validation from the world. She possessed a rare, almost secretive loyalty, a loyalty that was not loud, not demanding, but deep and unshakable. The Queen saw in her granddaughter a reflection of herself, a quiet strength, a deep respect for history, and a love for the things that truly mattered. Queen Elizabeth had never wanted the Grey House to be seen as a trophy, a public spectacle. She knew that Louise would treat it with the reverence it deserved. The legacy it held would never be rewritten for convenience or used as a pawn in the modernizing narrative of the monarchy. And so, when the time came for the Grey House to pass into the hands of someone worthy, Queen Elizabeth chose Louise not because of her position in the royal family, but because of her integrity. Louise was the one who could be trusted to preserve the true essence of the monarchy, not as a symbol of grandeur, but as a guardian of its unspoken history. What makes Louise's inheritance even more profound is the role she was chosen to play in preserving the most intimate part of her grandmother's legacy. The Grey House was not just a sanctuary for the Queen, it was the vault of her private life. Inside, the Queen had stored more than just the trivialities of state matters. The Grey House held her most candid letters to world leaders, her deepest thoughts about the monarchy, and her private reflections on her reign. It contained the voice of the woman behind the crown, the woman who had faced unimaginable challenges, losses, and triumphs, all while the world watched. But Louise's inheritance was more than just symbolic. It was a promise to protect the Queen's private history from the forces that would seek to reshape or commercialize it. Louise was not meant to be a figurehead, not meant to stand in front of a camera or perform for an audience. She was meant to be a keeper, a guardian of the Queen's unvarnished truth. And in choosing Louise, Queen Elizabeth ensured that her most personal history would never be rewritten for convenience or political gain. In the years to come, as the monarchy faced new challenges and shifts in public perception, it would be Louise who would hold the key to the Grey House's secrets. She would carry forward the Queen's quiet legacy, one that was rooted not in spectacle but in the moral authority of a life well lived, a life that had always been about service, not show. The decision to pass the Grey House into Louise's hands was not just a testament to her character. It was a deliberate act of defiance against the forces that sought to rewrite the royal family's story. It was a silent rebellion against the forces of modernization and commercial branding that were beginning to dominate the narrative of the royal family. Queen Elizabeth understood that the true power of the monarchy lay not in land or titles, but in the quiet, steadfast preservation of its most sacred legacies. And so, as Lady Louise Windsor stepped into her role as the guardian of the Grey House, the world saw something far more profound than the passing of an estate. They saw the passing of a moral authority that had been carefully cultivated over generations. In an age where everything seemed to be up for sale, where public image and spectacle had become the currency of the monarchy, Louise stood as a reminder that some things, some legacies, were too precious to be commodified. Lady Louise's inheritance of the Grey House was not just about land or property. It was about the preservation of the monarchy's soul. In protecting the Queen's private history, Louise had become the last safeguard against the rewriting of royal truth. In the process, she had ensured that the most powerful inheritance wasn't a title, but the courage to remain true to what mattered most. Louise wasn't a performer. She never sought the spotlight, nor did she revel in the attention that came with being part of the royal family. She didn't wear her title like a badge or flaunt her status to garner public affection. Instead, Louise embodied a quiet loyalty, a calm presence that ran deep, a love of history, a passion for preserving the legacies that mattered most to her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. She wasn't drawn to the noise of modern royalty. She valued the silence, the space to reflect, and the profound responsibility of protecting what was sacred. Queen Elizabeth recognized something in Louise, a reflection of her own sister, Princess Margaret. Both were sharp-witted, intelligent, and deeply devoted to their family, but where Margaret's brilliance had often been overshadowed by personal drama and a desire for validation in the public eye, Louise exuded a serene steadiness. Louise was different. She didn't need the world's gaze. She had no desire for accolades, no need to perform. It was this lack of pretension that the Queen cherished. To Elizabeth, Louise was the one who could protect the Grey House, not as a trophy of heritage or public spectacle, but as a sanctuary, a place that held the most intimate history of the monarchy, far beyond the reach of commercialization and political ambition. Louise's quiet determination became her greatest strength. It was not the loud, commanding presence often seen in royal heirs that would protect the legacy of the monarchy. It was the silent, steadfast guardianship of a young woman who understood the value of what had been entrusted to her. As the world learned of Lady Louise Windsor's unexpected inheritance, it became clear that her role in the monarchy was no longer merely ceremonial. She had inherited far more than just land or a property hidden deep within the Scottish Highlands. She had inherited the heart of the British monarchy's soul, a space where the deepest secrets of the crown had been safeguarded for decades. The Grey House was not just a building, it was a repository of memories, a treasure trove of royal history that could never be rewritten or erased. It contained the Queen's unspoken reflections, her personal letters, photographs, and documents that were never meant for public consumption. This was not the grand history celebrated by parades or ceremonies. The Grey House held the quieter, more intimate history, the moments of doubt, the private fears, the tender letters to family, and the heartfelt notes to world leaders. These were the thoughts of a monarch who had borne the weight of an empire for 70 years, a woman whose legacy was as much about the private moments of her reign as it was about the public triumphs. And as Louise stood at the threshold of this new chapter, inheriting not just the estate, but the memories embedded within its walls, she became more than just the Queen's granddaughter. She embodied the quiet strength that Queen Elizabeth had always valued. While the world clamored for the loudest voices, for the most glamorous events, Louise carried forward something far more powerful, the strength of silent, unwavering duty. Louise's inheritance, far from being a symbol of public recognition or personal glory, was a testament to the quiet power of her character. In a family so often defined by spectacle and the demands of public life, Louise had shown that true power lay not in titles or appearances, but in the dignity of serving a purpose beyond oneself. She was not a royal by title alone. She had become the keeper of something much more precious: the truth of her grandmother's life, the unfiltered voice of a monarch who had given everything to her nation, but had kept a part of herself hidden away. As the guardian of the Grey House, Louise had taken on the most sacred responsibility of all to protect the soul of the monarchy. She didn't wear the weight of her inheritance like a crown. Instead, she carried it with humility, understanding that what she protected wasn't just a house or an estate, it was the heart of the royal family's legacy. The Grey House contained pieces of history that would never be rewritten for convenience or manipulated for public consumption. It held the Queen's truth, untarnished by the pressures of modernity. In many ways, Louise became a living embodiment of the monarchy's soul, not because she sought to be, but because she had been chosen by her grandmother to preserve it. The Grey House was more than just a building. It was the embodiment of Queen Elizabeth's life, and Louise, quiet, steadfast, and devoted, was now its protector. In an era where the monarchy often faced the challenge of modernizing to remain relevant in the public eye, Louise's inheritance signaled a different kind of royal power, one that didn't require a stage or a platform. Her strength lay in the ability to remain true to her family's legacy without bending to the pressures of modernity. And in that quiet strength, she had become something far more powerful than any title could bestow, a true guardian of the monarchy's soul.